You've heard the story before, haven't you? A lonely fox, 1,000 years of wandering. A girl who just wants to be human, who falls in love with a mortal man and counts down the days, praying he won't run. Sweet, really, very poetic. The storytellers were always so kind to her. But I've been watching her for a very long time. Much longer than any story you've been told. And let me tell you what the legends were too afraid to say out loud. She is not waiting for love. She is waiting for your liver. Warm, still trembling with life. The concentrated essence of everything that makes you alive. And she wants it inside her. Don't look so horrified. She's not cruel. She's not heartless. She's just been hungry. For 1,000 years. And hunger, real, ancient hunger, has a way of making everything else look like a costume. The beauty, the tears, the love story. All of it, a mask. The most perfect mask ever worn. Want to know what's underneath? Then stay. Walk with me. Before the fear, there was reverence. I know. Because I was there. 2,000 years ago. Every corner of East Asia. The fox was not a monster. Not a warning. Not something to run from. It was a sign. In the oldest records, older than most kingdoms that exist today. A white fox appearing near a village meant one thing. Something sacred was coming. A great ruler. A turn of fortune. The fox didn't threaten. It announced. Korea was no different. People left food at the mouth of fox dens, not as a trap, as an offering. They stepped carefully around the paths where foxes walked, as though the ground itself had become holy. A fox that had lived long enough was believed to hear human words, to understand human hearts, to shape the fate of an entire family across generations. There was no horror in it, only respect. I remember that world. But then, things changed. Joseon arrived, and with it, Confucianism. A philosophy built on hierarchy, on reason, on the idea that the world should be legible, neat, categorized, controlled. the fox does not like to be controlled. Everything that couldn't be explained by logic began to be pushed aside. Shamanism, nature worship, the old spirits of the mountains and rivers, one by one, labeled as superstition, as danger, as evil. The fox went with them. She was no longer sacred. She became something that deceives, something that seduces men away from virtue, something to be feared, avoided, destroyed. Isn't it interesting? The moment you tell people to fear something, the stories get so much more vivid. The fox grew 9 tails. She got a name, Gumiho. Gumiho. Say it slowly. 9 tails. Fox. That first word. 9. In East Asian philosophy, 9 is not just a number. It is the number of completion, the number of heaven itself. Among all numbers, 9 sits at the highest point a living thing can reach. The Chinese emperor wore 9 dragons on his robes. The Forbidden City, 9,999 rooms. One short of 10,000, because 10,000 belonged only to heaven. And even an emperor knew better than to reach for that. So when we say the Gumiho has 9 tails, we are not saying she has many tails. We are saying she has gone as far as a fox can possibly go. But she didn't arrive there quickly. No. 1 tail for every 100 years lived. 1 century. 1 tail. To earn the 9th, she had to survive. For 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Think about what that actually means. Dynasties rose and collapsed while she watched from the mountains. Wars began as rumors and ended as ruins. Villages appeared, filled with life, and were swallowed back into the earth. Languages shifted. Gods changed names. Entire ways of living were born and forgotten. And through all of it, she watched. She watched humans love each other, the way a man would walk faster when he saw his wife waiting at the gate, the way a mother would press her forehead against her child's in the dark, the way strangers would share food without being asked. And somewhere across those centuries, something shifted inside her. She stopped watching as an outsider. she started to want. Let me tell you a smaller story. One from a time when even tigers smoked. Wait, don't look at me like that. In Korea, that's how every real story begins. 호랑이 담배 피우던 시절. Long ago, back when tigers smoked. Yes, you heard me correctly. Not a metaphor. Tigers smoked. In this land, that sentence makes perfect sense. So, if we live in a country where tigers enjoyed a good pipe, heck, is it really so hard to believe a fox could live for 1,000 years? The tigers have stopped smoking, of course, but the Gumiho, she never left. Joseon, mid-dynasty. A mountain so deep it doesn't even exist on a map. A young scholar traveling alone. The sun drops faster than a falling stone, and suddenly, he's swallowed by the dark. He follows a single lantern to a small inn at the forest's edge. He thinks he's found safety. Poor boy. That night, a woman arrives. A face like moonlight, eyes like the bottom of a well. White jogori and deep red skirt, the color of a fresh wound. She speaks. He's a Joseon scholar, stiff with morality. But her words, they are a drug. She doesn't just recite poetry. She breathes it. She speaks of the fall of the Goryeo dynasty as if she had watched the palaces burn. Because she had. They talk until the air grows cold. And before he lay down to sleep, something nagged at him. A beautiful, impossibly learned woman, alone, in a mountain inn, in the middle of nowhere. It didn't make sense. He went to the window. The woman is gone. Instead, a fox sits perfectly still, 9 tails drifting in the night air, like white smoke. Cold, silent, hungry. He ran at dawn. He never looked back. He told everyone he survived a monster. Ha! But that's the version people tell at dinner tables. The safe version. The one where the human is the hero. do you want the version that stays with you? The one that keeps me awake? Now, the real story. But before I tell you about this, let me tell you what she was. You saw what happened to that scholar the moment he saw 9 tails in the moonlight. He ran, didn't even wait for dawn. Why? Not just because she was a fox. Koreans knew exactly what a Gumiho was hunting for. There are 2 ways a Gumiho can become human. The first, find someone who will love you, knowing exactly what you are. The second, consume 100 human livers, one by one, 100, until your cold veins finally start to run warm. That's what he was running from, not a fox. The hunger that looked at him and saw nothing but one more liver to make it to 100. There are whispers, old ones, that some Gumiho who ran out of patience didn't bother waiting for the living. Freshly dug graves, visited before sunrise, the body intact, only the liver gone. I'm not going to confirm or deny that. Before we move on, the liver. Why the liver? In Korea, the liver is not just an organ. It is the seat of the soul, the core of life force. To take someone's liver is to take everything they are. But that conversation, not yet. I'll come back to it. What I will tell you now is this. There was one Gumiho. She had consumed 99 livers. One more, just one more, and it would be over. 1,000 years of waiting. Finally finished. And then she found him. He was a farmer, just a farmer. The kind of man who woke before the sun, worked until his hands cracked, and came home each evening to share a meal that was never quite enough, but was always divided equally. She had watched kings and generals and poets for 1,000 years, men whose names are still remembered. And the one she couldn't stop watching was him. Not because he was special, because he was the opposite of everything she was. She had lived 1,000 years. He would live maybe 60. She had power no human could match. He had nothing but his hands and his field. She came down from the mountain. She took her human form. She came for his liver. And then, something she had not planned for. She had hunted humans for centuries. She knew how they moved, how they thought, how they lied. She was ready for all of it. But she was not ready for the silence. The evenings where nothing happened, where he came home tired, washed his face, sat down, and just existed. Not performing, not pretending. Just a man at the end of his day, being exactly what he was. She had lived 1,000 years. She had never just existed. She wanted to know what this feeling was. So she stayed, longer than she needed to. And somewhere in that staying, she forgot why she came. She had come to take his liver. She stayed because she couldn't. Not because she was stopped, because she didn't want to anymore. And that is the part the stories never quite know how to tell. Do you know how long it takes to learn how to be human? Not the walking, not the talking. Any fox can do that after a few centuries. I mean the small things. The way humans say goodnight to each other before they sleep. Like they're not sure the other person will still be there in the morning. The way they hold a bowl of rice with both hands when they offer it to someone. The way they laugh at things that aren't funny just to make someone else feel less alone. She learned all of it, every single thing. And slowly, he let her in. They had 1 year together, maybe a little more. I won't tell you it was perfect. It wasn't. He was stubborn. She was carrying 1,000 years of loneliness she didn't quite know how to put down. But there were also evenings. Evenings where the work was done and the fire was low and they just sat together. Not saying anything, not needing to. She told me once that those evenings were the closest she ever got to feeling human. The legends say there is another way, a harder way. Find one human who will look directly at what you are. 9 tails, fox eyes, 1,000 years of hunger. And choose you anyway. She wanted that. And one night, the way these things always go, he saw her. Not a glimpse, not a shadow. He saw everything. The 9 tails, the eyes he didn't recognize. Ancient, tired, hungry. The 1,000 years she'd been carrying, laid out in front of him like an accusation. She could have let him go. she reached into herself and held out the one thing she had never shown anyone. The Yowu Gosel, the fox bead. A small, luminous orb. Everything she was. Every century of accumulated power. Every memory, every longing she had carried across 1,000 years. Compressed into something small enough to hold in a human hand. She held it out to him, open palm, no tricks, no deception, just here. This is everything I am. Take it. Know me. He hesitated. I think about that hesitation a lot. One moment, the entire distance. Between 1,000 years of loneliness and something else entirely. He ran. Early the next morning, he came back with the villagers, with torches. They found her in the forest. She hadn't run far. Maybe she was tired of running. She didn't fight. She just stood there, 9 tails folded in like a dying flower, eyes down. Her last words.
I only wanted to be like you.
She wasn't hunting. She was only asking to be accepted, and nobody ever did. How about you? Would you have accepted? For a long time, I've watched people group these stories together and call them the same. The Gumiho, the Huli Jing, the Kitsune. At a glance, they look alike. Fox spirits, shapeshifters, creatures that have lived beside humans for centuries. And in a way, they do share roots, but follow their stories closely, and something begins to shift, not just in what they do, in what they are allowed to be. China's fox, the Huli Jing. She moves through the human world, through literature, through centuries of stories. And she is never just one thing. In Strange Tales from a Chinese studio, she appears as a scholar, a lover, a protector, a deceiver. Sometimes she brings ruin. Sometimes she saves a life. Sometimes she falls in love and stays. She has room to be dangerous, room to be kind, room to be both in the same story. She is not fixed. She shifts between warmth and danger, between the human world and something beyond it, and the world makes space for her to do that. She lives among humans, close enough to touch, but never required to become one. Japan's Kitsune. You find her at the gate of something sacred. Stone, still, watching. At Inari shrines across Japan, fox statues stand guard, not as decoration, not as warning, but as presence. She is the messenger of Inari, the kami of rice, of harvest, of prosperity. She can trick you, possess you, lead you somewhere you didn't mean to go. But she does all of this within a world that already knows her name. She has a place in the divine order, a role that was given to her, and that no one can take away. She is sacred, even when she is dangerous, even when she resists. The structure holds her, and she holds the structure. She has a place, a role, a world that already knows where she belongs. And then there's Korea's Gumiho. She has neither. No shrine built in her name, no role assigned by any god, no sacred order that claims her. She is powerful. Centuries of life, knowledge that no human could carry, the ability to see what others cannot. And yet, in story after story, that power leads to the same place. Not a throne, not a shrine, not a name in the divine order, not even a place to stand. Just a question. What would you give, what would you become to be allowed in? Fox spirits across East Asia are often linked to spiritual energy, sometimes even a jewel. But in Korean stories, that idea becomes something much more intimate. The Yowu Gusul, a fox bead. Small, luminous, holding something of her essence, her knowledge, her power, everything she has gathered across centuries of watching. In some traditions, a fox's power is something it keeps, something hidden, something protected. But here, in some stories, it is taken from her. In others, she offers it willingly to a human, not to harm them, to be known by them. She places everything she is into something small enough to hold, and holds it out. That gesture, that is the difference. The Huli Jing keeps her power moving through the world. Fluid, hidden, hers. The Kitsune moves within a world that has a name for her. A shrine. A gate built around it. Anand, the Gumiho. She takes everything she has gathered across centuries and makes it small enough for a human hand to hold. Not to threaten, not to impress, not to take anything, but to be known. The Huli Jing is rarely asked to prove herself. She moves freely because the world has room for her. The Kitsune is rarely asked to give anything up. She is held, but held with reverence. But the Gumiho stands at the edge of the human world, holding everything she is, and waits to see if it's enough. Centuries of waiting. And the answer, more often than not, was silence. Now place them side by side. China, she lives with humans. Japan, she belongs to the sacred. Korea. She stands outside both. Maybe that's why her story feels different. Not because she is more, not because she is less, but because her question is different. And maybe that question isn't only hers. What do you think? Before I go any further, I want to come back to something. The liver. I know what you're thinking. It sounds grotesque. A creature hunting humans for their organs. A horror story. Nothing more. But if that's all you took from it, you missed the most important part. In Korean, there is a phrase, Gani 떨어지다. Literally, my liver dropped. It means I was startled out of my mind. So frightened that something inside me fell. 간에 기별도 안 간다. Not even a message reached my liver. It means I ate and felt nothing. The emptiness did not move. There is another. 애간장이 녹는다. My liver and intestines are burning. It means I am consumed with anxiety, with longing, with a grief I cannot put down. And there is one more. 간이고 쓸개고 다 줄 수 있어. I would give you my liver and my gallbladder. Everything inside me, everything I am. And in Korean, there are many more expressions like these. In the Korean language, the liver is not simply an organ. It is where fear lives, where longing burns, where the deepest love is stored. It is the self. So when the Gumiho reaches for a human liver, she is not reaching for flesh. She is reaching for the seat of everything that makes a person. Undeniably, irreversibly human. The fear, the longing, the love that burns from the inside. She wants to know what that feels like. Not from the outside, watching through the trees. From the inside. And now I want to talk about something else. Something that has no translation, not in English, not in any language I have found, in 1,000 years of looking. Han. It isn't sadness. It isn't anger. It isn't grief, exactly. And it isn't resentment. It's what happens when all of those things compress together inside a person or a people over a very long time. The weight of a dream that was never allowed to come true. The ache of an injustice that was never corrected. the hollow space left by something you wanted so completely that wanting it became part of who you are. Koreans have carried Han for centuries. You can hear it in pansori, the ancient form of musical storytelling, where a single performer holds an entire world of sorrow in their voice.
이 민족의 한을 어찌 풀고
For hours, without breaking. You can see it in Salpuri. A dancer alone in the dark, holding nothing but a white cloth, moving it through the air, as if she could untangle something that has no shape. You can feel it in the pull of a folk song that you don't understand the words to, but somehow already know the feeling of a body moving through grief, a voice carrying what the body cannot. You don't need to know the steps. You don't need to know the words. Han moves through you before your mind catches up, like a sound you've never heard. That somehow sounds like home. The Gumiho is handmade flesh. She has lived 1,000 years, and she cannot become human. She understands human emotion with a depth most humans never reach, and she cannot be recognized as one of them. She wants the simplest thing imaginable to belong. And that one simple thing is the only thing in the world she cannot have. She is a creature of the in-between, between animal and human, between the wild and the ordered world, between power and belonging. She cannot step fully into any of it. And the liver, the thing she reaches for, the thing she burns for, is exactly that. She wants to know what it means to have one. I think that's why this story has survived 1,000 years. Because the in-between is not a place only foxes inhabit. The immigrant who is never fully from anywhere. The person whose identity doesn't fit the category the world made for them. The one who stands at the edge of every room. Welcome enough to be invited, not enough to fully stay. The Gumiho is their story too. Maybe that's why she never really died. Here's what I've watched happen. The Gumiho didn't disappear. She just changed where she lives. She left the old stories and walked into films, television dramas, webtoons, animation, games. Not one version, many. So, what does that actually look like? A Korean drama asked a different kind of question. What if the Gumiho wasn't something to fear, but someone to fall for? My girlfriend is a Gumiho gave her a name, a face, a personality. She was clumsy, curious, completely herself, and audiences fell for her. Not despite what she was, because of it. And it's not always a she. Tale of the Nine-Tailed broke that tradition entirely. A Gumiho who was a man, who had lived so long. He had forgotten what it felt like to want anything. That shift carried forward. My roommate is a Gumiho. First a webtoon, then a drama. Gave us another male Gumiho. 999 years old. 1 year away from finally becoming human. And then there's Aria, a character in one of the most played games in the world, League of Legends. Millions of players across every continent have chosen to play as a nine-tailed fox without ever having heard the word Gumiho. In one story, she's dangerous. In another, misunderstood. In another, she's the one in control. Different tones, different roles, but you still recognize her. That consistency across completely different stories, that's not accidental. That's how I know she's still here. Because in the original stories, the structure never changed. She hides, she imitates, she is discovered, and then she is removed, killed, banished, erased. The story restores order by eliminating her. That was always the function. But modern versions don't follow that anymore. Now, she remains. She exists alongside humans, forms relationships with them, and the story continues without resolving her existence. That alone would never have been allowed before. There's something else I've noticed. She is no longer defined by becoming human. In older stories, that was the only path. Become human or be destroyed. Now, it's a choice. Some versions still follow that path, others don't. And she is no longer punished for remaining what she is. That is not a small thing. The Gumiho used to be a problem the story had to solve. Now, she is the perspective the story follows. And once the narrative moves to her side, the question changes. Not, how do we remove her? But, how does she exist among us? I've watched stories do this for a long time. The ones that last are never the ones that demand a single answer. She was always ambiguous, human, but not fully, dangerous, but not entirely, desired and feared at the same time. That complexity used to make people uncomfortable. Now, they call it depth. And so she keeps appearing. not as a fixed symbol, but as a flexible one. Adaptable, reusable, still recognizable, but never identical. She changes as the stories change. The stories change as the people telling them change. So the question is no longer whether she still exists. The question is how she continues to exist within the present and what that allows her to become. Let's go back to where we started. What did she want? Not a liver. Not a man. Not even in the end a human body. She wanted to be seen. Not feared, not hunted, not pitied. Just seen. The world didn't give her that. And because it feared what it couldn't name, it made her into something that made sense. A name is just a mirror, held up to whoever is doing the naming. I have watched this story, told more times than I can count. I have watched her hunted, feared, desired, destroyed, and remade again and again. Every time she comes back, not because the stories preserved her, but because something in us refuses to let her go. Maybe that says more about us than it does about her. She's still out there, I think, waiting to see if anything has changed. Has it? And I wonder, she isn't the only one, is she? Every culture has something that lives in the in-between. You know the one I mean. What do they call her? Where you come from. More stories are waiting. If you're still listening.
I am Aria, hear my call. Aria, hear my call. Whispers rising, shadows fall. Shadows fall. Old soul stories carved in scars under silence.